shouldn't have to be doing this. This is really hard. And I've got handcuffs on, but I'm not a criminal. I'm trying to safeguard the future.
Remember all their voices. Everything is different the second time around.
Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this live stream. So this live stream is the first of a new online series called Drill Deep Talks. So these are topical, exposing and controversial online talks hosted by Just Stop Oil. So it's going to be a fortnightly series where we drill deep on climate issues, hearing from notable and knowledgeable speakers, boldly confronting the hard truths of the climate crisis and outlining how you can make a change. So tonight's talk is called What Would Greta Do? Solidarity with Lützerath. So I'm sure some of you may have seen in the news lately, Greta Thunberg was arrested for the first time, which is a pretty big statement for her to make. And it was in the Lützerath eviction. So in this talk tonight, we're going to hear all about that, and we'll be reflecting our support for the protesters that have been standing against abusive police powers and fighting for the German town of Lützerath, which is being evicted and destroyed to make way for a destructive and environmentally devastating coal mine. So over 35,000 climate activists joined the 100 protesters who had already occupied the town for 7 months to oppose this life-destroying expansion of this huge coal mine. They were met with thousands of police officers using batons and water cannons to evict them, with Greta Thunberg, as I just said, amongst one of those arrested. Whilst UK media outlets criticise the German government, our government continues with their plans for over 100 new oil and gas licenses, and even a new coal mine as well, and the stripping of our human right to protest. So tonight we will hear firsthand from individuals who were involved in the occupation itself, as well as speaking to individuals involved in coalition groups, environmental activists who were involved in Last Generation, in Renovate Switzerland, and Restore Passenger Rail New Zealand. We will also be investigating the role of the media in climate activism and the difference between how Just Stop Oil is depicted by the media versus the Lützerath eviction and other groups in Germany as well. And we'll be basically touching on, how we all need to be involved in such a global crisis. International collaboration is absolutely necessary, and we'll be outlining how you can get involved with it as well. So this talk is not designed to make you feel hopeless or powerless. We are here to remind you of the hundreds of others across Germany, Europe, and the rest of the world that are fighting for the same thing that we are, our future and the future of generations to come. So we want to start by outlining how you can immediately create a positive impact, support the cause, and use your individual power to create change. So Just Stop Oil, if you don't know anything about us, we will be talking about the climate science and the social science behind non-violent direct action. But Just Stop Oil is a coalition of ordinary people who are non-violently fighting for their lives. Our demand is a simple, no-brainer demand of no new fossil fuel licenses in the UK. There's actually 3 ways that you can take action. Take part in Just Stop Oil right now, here today, which make a huge difference to our campaign and ones like ours, without which we will not be able to continue this fight to save humanity. So the easiest and most immediately effective action you can take is to donate. So if you can give more, that's amazing. But as a minimum, we ask that once a month you commit to giving what you would earn in just 1 hour of your work. Your donation will help the hundreds of people who need support as they mobilize people up and down the country, giving talks, leafleting, as well as those, of course, on the front lines of civil resistance, whether it's travel, food, accommodation, legal costs, and financial support throughout prison. This all really racks up. It's actually a lot more costly than you might think, being involved in kind of climate activist campaigns. So if you can give anything, that would be absolutely amazing. We need your support to raise another £1 million. So there should be some links coming up on the screen of how you can donate. So you can donate through our website. We really would encourage monthly donations, just so it's much easier to budget. It's much easier to stay afloat when we have a regular income coming in. But you can also donate to our new Chuffed fundraiser as well, which is a one-off. And literally every little helps, or whatever supermarket said that. It's true for Just Stop Oil as well. So yeah, that's one of the ways in which you can help. Number 2 is you can volunteer. So you can support Just Stop Oil by volunteering your skills and your time in a role that suits you. So honestly, there are so many roles that you can get involved in. I would be surprised if you find that there's nothing for you. So it can include mobilization, which can be leafleting, hosting talks, organizing talks, ringing people interested in Just Stop Oil. It can be video and graphics editing, helping create content for social media, doing admin, well-being support, police station support, prison support. And the main one that we would absolutely love help with at the moment is fundraising. So if you have any experience in fundraising, sales experience, marketing experience, if you could offer any of your time and your skills, even just to advise us, that would be fantastic. As it really is costly to continue civil resistance campaigns, and it would be fantastic to get people who know what they're doing because we do know what we're doing, but we need more people who also know. So yeah, there should be a link on the screen as well in terms of how you can get involved in supporting us. The main way is to go onto the link and go to a talk. We do Zoom talks and in-person talks, a full-on hour responsibilities at this time talk. And you can also reach out to your local regions if you know anybody in Just Stop Oil locally, and they'll help you get connected so that you can start volunteering. And the final way in which you can get involved with Just Stop Oil is to attend a non-violence training. So we're now hosting non-violence training for lots of different groups, not exclusively Just Stop Oil. But basically, these give you an insight into the principles of non-violence, which is key to our campaign of civil resistance. And it helps you decide whether you might be willing yourself to take direct action and step up. So again, the link for this should be on the screen. That can be how you can get involved as well. And goes without saying, but you don't have to just do one of those. You can do all 3 if you really love us, and we will love you in return. So before I introduce the speakers for this talk, I'm just going to introduce myself briefly. So my name is Louise Harris. I'm 24 years old, and I'm a supporter of Just Stop Oil. I have been since March last year. I've taken action multiple times. I've been arrested 5 times, and I don't know how recognizable my face actually is, but some of you might recognize me from a viral video when I was on top of an M25 gantry, crying for my life, which the Daily Mail love to take the piss out of. But yeah, for that action, I was remanded to HMP Bronzefield, which is prison, on remand. I was there for 8 days, and I was then subject to a GPS ankle tag for over a month, which bound me to my hometown. But here I am. I'm still part of Just Stop Oil. I still have several impending court cases, and being involved in Just Stop Oil has resulted in a huge amount of love in my life and a sense of purpose, this feeling that I'm part of something far bigger than just myself, and that I am standing on the right side of history, doing all that I can to save my life, to save your life, and to save literally life itself. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our lovely first speaker. So to start the conversation tonight, we're going to hear from 2 other Just Stop Oil supporters, just to discuss briefly the climate science and the social science, which form the basis of why we engage in civil resistance at this point in time. So we're going to hear from Alex Hoyle and Aaron Gunning. So yeah, first we're going to hear from Alex. So Alex is a recent law graduate and climate crisis educator. He has taken arrestable action 3 times blocking roads in central London with Just Stop Oil. So he joined Just Stop Oil last September. He's originally from Houston, Texas, and was going to return to Houston after graduating, but decided to stay in the UK to take action with JSO and give the talks. So without further ado, welcome, Alex. Hold on, you're on mute.
I am muted. Sorry about that. Yeah, hi guys. My name is Alex. Along with many other supporters of JSO, we give talks telling people about the raw truth of the climate crisis, encouraging people to take action. I'm going to start off this sort of primer for people who haven't heard one before, although many of you probably have. I'm going to be talking about the facts of the crisis, right? And we can take them how we will. But these are facts derived from peer-reviewed research done by experts, which governments and corporations are essentially doing fuck all nothing about, okay? So this isn't about politics, and it's not about rumors, it's about facts. I'm going to expand on the fact that we are facing a stomach-turning, chilling future. I'm going to tell you what it means that the 1.5 target is done and dusted. I'm going to tell you what it means if we hit 2 and 3, and I'm going to briefly touch on how much time we've got. So 1.5, right, is gone. Maybe you heard about 1.5 at the Paris Accords or the various COPs. Yeah, even up to COP26, they're saying keep 1.5 alive, right? It's gone. It was DOA. It was dead on arrival. Leading researchers who were authors on the Accords, decades of research between them, have admitted they could not name a single researcher that thought that the 1.5 limit was possible. The IPCC report, gold standard, peer-reviewed climate science research, right? They say we're going to hit 1.5 by the 2030s. It could be sooner than that even. The median estimate is 2033, okay? I'm 24, that's not so far away, right? I assume for many of you, the same. So if 1.5 is our future, right, it's what we have to look forward to, maybe we should acquaint ourselves with it, okay? 1.5 degrees, according to the UN, means that up to 700 million people in Africa could be displaced. That's over half the population of the continent. A higher confidence number is 200 million. That's still fucking crazy, right? 200 million people. Migrants or refugees will flee across territories, provinces, and states. They will move hundreds of miles. Many will die. Conflict is inevitable, right, in that circumstance. For reference, the Syrian crisis, externally displaced peoples, 7 million, okay? This would be dozens or hundreds of times bigger. Think about how the richest, most supposedly democratic nations in the world of Europe, right, dealt with that crisis. Refugees were forced into unseaworthy crafts by traffickers. They were in many cases refused help by coast guards. And if they survived, they were welcomed with open arms into camps and prisons, right? 2 degrees, which the IPCC estimate that we may hit by the 2040s, right? Still not so far away for us young people, right? 37% of the global population at that point will be exposed to regular extreme heat shock events every 5 years, okay? The reefs, many coastal communities around the world depend on them, right, for fishing and everything. They release their symbiotic algae. We lose 99% of reefs due to bleaching. We lose reefs in our lifetimes. At 3 degrees, the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, they have a paper called The Human Niche. They study where humans can live on the planet. They say that the 0.8% of land mass that is currently inhospitable due to extreme heat, like the Sahara level, right, of heat, that degree of land mass balloons to 19%. That could potentially add another 1 to 3 billion climate migrants into this system. Again, this could mean mass crop failures, war, and the rise of fascism. I don't know if you recall during the Syrian refugee crisis, the wave of fascism that swept Europe, right? AfD, Golden Dawn in Greece, right? All of these different parties were tearing into the refugee crisis. It was red meat, right, for their base. Again, imagine that dynamic 100 times stronger, 1,000 times stronger, okay? Imagine guns, dogs, barbed wire, and turrets on your beaches, your local beaches, okay? So how much time have we got? Not long, right? David King, Chief Scientific Advisor to the UK for 2 different governments, Labour and Tory. A couple years ago, he said we had less than 5 years left. That was a couple years ago. Why does he say that? Maybe that sounds crazy to some people, right? I'm talking about impacts that are still, very close, but they're still, 10, 15, whatever years away. It's because of tipping points. Tipping points are thresholds. You cross them, you can't go back. You've crossed the Rubicon, they keep on going. A conversion process starts, and we roll into runaway climate breakdown. The gas pedal bolted to the bottom of the car, right? Even at 1.1 or 1.2 degrees that we're currently at post-industrial revolution, we are starting to breach some of these tipping points already. Specifically, the Greenland ice sheet, Western Arctic ice sheet, right? They're starting to collapse. 2 tipping points, I'll just give you really briefly, just so you know. Amazon, right? It's going from a lush, biodiverse carbon sink into a savanna, okay? Dry seasons cause dieback. That causes changes in precipitation. The trees, they don't proliferate the moisture anymore. The forest gets drier, and it continues on and on, right? The Amazon contains 1/4 of all carbon stored in the atmosphere. Sorry, 1/4 of all carbon that's stored on land. The next one, permafrost. It's a slab of frozen soil, right? It sits on 1/4 of landmass in the northern hemisphere. It preserves organic matter, right? Huge quantities of it. It stores a lot of carbon, okay? Released, the thawing of the permafrost alone could add 1.69 degrees of warming into the system, right? We talked about 1.5, what that meant. We talked about 2, we talked about 3, what that meant. 1.69 degrees is nothing to laugh at, right? The permafrost contains twice as much carbon as there is in the atmosphere right now. So tipping points, right? We don't have a lot of time. Here's the bottom line. I'll get to it really quick. They're not going to stop. They're not going to fucking stop, right? Corporations, the government, the media, they're not going to stop. I'm ashamed to admit this, but for a long time, I still, at some level, must have held the belief in institutions that someone somewhere, Ivy League educated, asshole, whatever, that it was their job to have this sorted, to do something about it. In 2017, my hometown, Houston, Texas, flooded. There was a rainstorm. It went on day after day after day, right? In the middle of my street, water up to here. By the end of that storm, houses for miles had a big pile in front of it, cladding and furniture, insulation, everything. It looked like the house had vomited its guts out on the front lawn because these houses, they had gotten damp, they had rot, everything else. Nearly 200,000, 100 to 200,000 homes flooded and had that kind of damage, right? It bankrupted the city to remove the debris. That's how bad it was, okay? I didn't become a climate activist in 2017 when Hurricane Harvey hit my hometown of Houston, Texas, even though I knew that my hometown could be wiped off the map, biblical style, right? From storm after storm after storm. But I thought someone somewhere has got to be working on this, right? Well, they're freaking not, okay? In 2012, defense departments, think tanks, Bill Gates even did a talk in 2015, identified viral pandemic as one of the worst threats that could hit modern society. They said our infrastructure can't handle it. They didn't make the necessary changes, and we had COVID, right? They're not going to handle it. They won't act. They will not shut the death machine down. Why does Antonio Guterres, head of the UN, Secretary General, right, say we're on a highway to climate hell? Why does David King say we have less than 5 years left? I'd argue these guys are desperate. Even from their positions of extreme institutional acceptance and privilege and power, they're ineffectual. And that's why they're freaking out. There are 195 carbon bombs planned across the world that will lock us into 2.7 degrees warming minimum. If we don't stop them, there will be projects going on in 2050. There will be projects going on. There will be coal and oil and gas and everything else in 2100. Okay? There will be projects going on amidst climate hell. So please, don't make the mistake of thinking that someone has got it sorted. They don't. It's up to us. It's now or never, and it's us or no one. So that's that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was, yeah, absolutely necessary information for everyone to know. I can understand if that information is overwhelming to some of you. I think it's important to remember that these predictions, obviously 1.5 degrees, Antonio Guterres, the head of the United Nations, has said there's no credible pathway currently in place for 1.5 degrees. But and obviously, as Alex said, there's tipping points at 1.5 degrees. The main one that we really want to stay underneath is 2 degrees. It could be lower. We want to stay as low as possible. But absolutely, if we're crossing 2 degrees, then that is irreversible, uncontrollable climate catastrophe. That is human extinction. So we still do have a window of opportunity in which we can act and prevent literally everything we know and love being absolutely destroyed. So that's why we have to act. If we don't, then as Alex said, that is global food shortages, global water shortages, wildfires, floods, people fleeing from their homes and not knowing where to go, where is safe. So, but there is time. It's not too late. It's not, obviously, there's a huge amount of privilege, isn't there, to be living in the UK right now, because 33 million people in Pakistan have already been displaced by floods. People in Africa, there's like 1 in 6 people in East Africa who are experiencing chronic hunger right now. So the climate crisis is here. It's here already. But it's not too late to save irreversible, uncontrollable climate catastrophe that will destroy everything, that will destroy everyone. So yeah, I hope that it's not all doomed. You know what I mean? That's what I want to just remind everyone there. But thank you so much, Alex. So we're now going to hear from Aaron. So he's going to talk about the social science of civil resistance. So Aaron graduated physics last year and was going to work on the technological side of the climate crisis, for example, looking into solar panels, etc. But after hearing a talk like this one, or like our responsibilities at this time talk that we give, he heard how little time we have left and decided that this wasn't going to be of any benefit to do technological stuff and solar panels, etc. Instead, he decided we need to engage in direct action against this government, and he joined Just Stop Oil. He is now a mobilizer with Just Stop Oil, putting on talks and encouraging other people to sign up to take action. So welcome, Aaron.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the solutions. And, well, basically the solution is, and has always been, to reduce carbon emissions, right? But, okay, how do we do that? Well, like, I could start listing, dozens of technological and scientific solutions that we have. Insulation, there's new technology coming out constantly, or just like, one example, limiting, for example, internal flights within the UK. But I'm just going to stop there with listing technological solutions. There really is no point, because the dozens that exist are not being implemented, even now in 2023. And one, shocking example of this is renewables. So this year, onshore wind energy is set to be 9 times cheaper than fossil fuel generated energy. I was shocked when I heard this. Have a look online. It's true. And yet in the UK, the government subsidizes the fossil fuel industry 32 times more than renewables. So what this goes to show us, really, is that the climate crisis is not a technological problem, right? As Louise said, I studied physics. I could have gone into researching the technology, but there's no point, because the nature of the problem is not technological or scientific. It's a social problem. I cared at the time, and still do, about solving it. And if we are really serious about solving it, yeah, we need to understand its nature, right? So it's a social problem, and so it requires a social solution. And that's basically what Just Stop Oil does. It does non-violent direct action. That's the social solution which exists. nonviolent direct action has worked literally countless times throughout history. Basically, any time where you see real wins for ordinary people, it's there in some form. And what nonviolent direct action is, it's people disrupting and withdrawing their consent from a system in order to force it to change. That's what it fundamentally is. A great example is strikes, right? In a strike, the workers disrupt, they withdraw their consent from the system, the factory, let's say, in order to force better safety conditions or force some sort of change, right? And there's literally studies, there's hard science that this works. You can look at workers all over the world, and you'll find that workers that have strong unions and the ability to do this disruptive direct action have better wages, better working conditions, right? So strikes are just one example. In a strike, obviously, the system being disrupted is quite small, a factory, let's say. But this scales to any system, basically, including the larger system we live in and the government, right? So some examples of nonviolent direct action include suffragettes and Chartists, getting men and women the right to vote, the Civil Rights era, including the Freedom Riders, Stonewall, the Gay Rights era, the gay rights, right? And some massive wins that we all know, like Gandhi in India, and the massive nonviolent direct action that went on there, kicking out what was literally at the time the largest military in the world, abolitionist movements ending slavery. And we could literally go on listing them throughout history. Some very recent ones include the 2005 fuel protests, the protests against the poll tax, which got that rid of in the UK, UK road protests. I think they shut down like 2/3 of the roads that Thatcher had planned to build, these new motorways, and even Extinction Rebellion, right? They got like one and a half out of their 3 demands met, I guess you could say. But that was within like a few weeks. And it goes on, right? So that's basically it. It's quite simple, really. If we disrupt society with enough people for long enough, then we win, we get our demand met, which is no new oil and gas, as Louise said. So you can sum it all up in the time that I did. Usually when we do this talk in real life, it takes a lot longer. And the reason for that is because although the kind of philosophy of it, the science of it is pretty straightforward, the decision to do it is very like personal and emotional, right? Out of the thousands, hundreds and thousands of people who've done similar action like this worldwide and in the UK with Just Stop Oil, all of those people have had to come to, I would say, like a personal awakening to their sense of power and responsibility, right? You know, all these systems, we are responsible for them in a sense. They require our consent to act, right? So yeah, I'm not talking, it's a sense of responsibility, awakening to that sense of responsibility over the decisions which your society, which your government makes. And yeah, if this resonates with you, if you feel this, then you're sick of feeling powerless, come hear this in real life and yeah, join. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Yeah, I don't know what to add to that, to be honest. I think a lot of people, when they see Just Stop Oil depicted in the news, they're thinking, you know, why are you causing such disruption? Go to the Houses of Parliament. We did that, you know, every single day in October. We were outside the Houses of Parliament. Go to the oil, disrupt the oil people. Yeah, we've done that as well. We blocked oil terminals. But the thing is, we need enough people doing these actions. And unfortunately, the media don't really like to cover the more sensible actions that we do. And that's why you see many of us in kind of public-facing disruption on the motorway, on the roads. That gets the most publicity. That gets our name out there, the message out there of the climate crisis, and that we have to act on it now. And for the last 50 years, we've tried non-disruptive forms of protest, signing petitions, writing to our MPs, going on a day-long march, and they haven't been listened to. They've been ignored. So civil resistance, non-violent direct action is inherently disruptive because that can't be ignored. And we need to become unignorable if we stand any chance of winning this. So thank you so much, Aaron. So our next speaker, I'm thrilled to announce, is Michael. So Michael Salzgeber, I hope I pronounced that right, probably not, is a 24-year-old activist who has put his physics undergraduate, another physics student, on hold to focus his energy on helping halt the collapse of civilization. For the past year, he has taken on the full-time role of coordinating the Letzte Generation, or Last Generation, press team in Germany. He has taken part in countless roadblocks and was inspired by Just Stop Oil activists who threw soup on Van Gogh's sunflowers, to then himself throw soup at the Ministry of Transportation. He was also part of a group of 6 individuals who successfully blocked the runway of Berlin's largest airport, halting air traffic for 2 hours and generating 1.6 million euros worth of extra expenses that they are currently in the middle of trying to be they're currently being sued for that, or they're trying to sue these activists for that. Michael was also part of the occupation in Lützerath and is going to tell us about some of his first-hand experience there. So thank you so much and welcome, Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much, Louise, for the kind introduction. First of all, I want to start off with kind of adding shortly a little bit to what Alex said previously. I'm not only a physics student, I'm also a mechanical engineer. And I kind of stopped being that because I realized that the problem that we have is social in nature and not scientific. And how we solve these social problems is with non-direct action. Direct non-violent action. Okay, so yeah, the story I want to tell you about is the story about the little village of Lützerath. This little village of Lützerath was standing next to an open pit coal mine. It was like a peninsula in the face of this coal mine. All the sides had already been the earth removed, so it was really like standing like a beacon of hope in the face of this large open pit coal mine, like a scene from a big movie with the last man standing in front of this. And this little village is sitting on 280 million tons of coal. This does not need to mean anything for you. It just means that this is 10 times as much as even the government scientists tell the government itself it can still burn without not just completely ripping through all the goals they have set for themselves. So 10 times as much. This is why when the coal company who is responsible of destroying Lützerath and is digging up all this coal, when they decided that they're going to evict everybody from this place, when the people were starting to leave, activists moved in and built tree houses all around the village and lived there for about 2 years, the longest of them. It was a few dozen people. And there were still going on legal battles, but then the company won out. And the government said, the government, who is actually run by, part of it is run by the Green Party. The Green Party of Germany was actually voted in. And they even said this coal company can go ahead with their exploration of coal under this village. And so they brought the hammer finally down on this village and said, okay, we need those activists out. These activists need to go out. We need this coal, this dirty, our future destroying coal. We need it, and we're going to get to it. And they really brought the hammer down on them. They threw at them everything they got. They brought in from all over the country more than 1,000 policemen and women. They had 5 water canisters. They brought dogs and horses, their batons, and everything in between. Standing against a few dozen people in this village, which they had now built into a beautiful shared place, a little utopia of living freely. And then they started evicting, and the people in this village, these few dozen people, called for help, and help was coming. In the short span of 2 weeks, there was a big demonstration announced and planned. And on this day, when I arrived there, 33,000 people were descending onto Lützerath. There were like little towns neighboring them. All the streets were completely packed. There were buses and buses and buses coming. We couldn't even keep track of it. And people were just moving towards the village. The people on stage were, amongst others, Greta Thunberg and Louise Harris, which is basically the German Greta Thunberg. And they were giving rousing speeches to the people, and the people were moving towards the village, going through and along police lines, were being beaten up. The videos you have seen on the internet are just the very tip of the iceberg. There were much worse things going on when the cameras were not present. And then we were standing in front of Lützerath, in front of this fortress that the police had built out by that time. They had lines of police officers. After these lines, there were fences. And after these fences, the water cannons were waiting for us. So thousands of people standing there and trying to get in, trying to save this little village from eviction, trying to save the humongous amounts of coal that are buried under it to keep it in the ground. And then the police were coming and rounding up the people and beating everybody back that was getting closer. Finally, after much cold and much hardship, the people moved back, and as you probably know, the police won out. Or did they? They didn't, because all these people and everybody watching on got one clear message from this. The message they got was, the people in power, even if we vote in the Green Party, is not willing or not able to stop the fossil fuel destruction of our world. So what I want to leave you with are the words from the AIDS activists who are fighting for their lives, like we fight for our lives today. It's their rallying call was, get in the streets or fucking die. So this is what I want to leave you today with. Thank you.
Whoops, I was on mute. Thank you so much, Michael, for telling us your experience of Lützerath. I think that's really powerful what you've just ended on there. So I'm not going to add to that. So thank you so much. Our next speaker, I'm very happy to announce, is Lena. So Lena is a 25-year-old activist who is part of Last Generation. So since joining, they have been involved in roadblocks, poster campaigns, climbing police vehicles, directly protesting against the government's actions. She regularly gives talks and trainings on activism and has herself been in custody several times. She does this all alongside her studies in earth and environmental sciences, and is about to start her bachelor thesis on what motivates people to become active with Last Generation. So thank you so much. Let's welcome Lena.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm just gonna start off right away. I'm gonna zoom out a bit more, and I'm gonna explain you a bit who Last Generation in Germany is, and what our demands are, and also what reactions or responses we got from the government and the public and the media. So to give you a little overview, because I don't know how much people that are listening know about Last Generation in Germany. So similar as Just Stop Oil, we're a climate protection movement of civil disobedience, which is trying to put as much pressure onto the government as possible to meet their own goals and to stop breaking with fundamental rights, the right to have a livable future for us and also for future generations. And Last Generation in Germany emerged at the beginning of 2022, so the beginning of last year, from a hunger strike of only a handful of people in front of the governmental building. And yeah, the movement gained great public attention, mainly through street blocks or roadblocks, and yeah, through a wave of public outrage. And I really I need to say it because I noticed that many people still don't know that we only go onto the street when the cars are like stopping, when there's like a stopped, like if there's a traffic light. We go on the street. We only sit down as soon as the police arrives, and some of the people glue themselves onto the street, and not all of them, never ever all of them, because we always have the option to open the roadblock again and to build an emergency line. I just noticed that still some people don't know it, although we try to push it through from the really beginning. We always said it. We always will have like an emergency line, and yeah. Next to these roadblocks, we also did poster campaigns, as you said. We also turned off pipelines, did these visual actions in front of the parliament, tried to talk to politicians. So we really tried everything, but we just noticed that these roadblocks caused like the most attention, like the media, attention by the media, and creates this like public tension, this constructive tension that you need to make everybody talk about this one topic. And yeah, even like in families, when they have dinner all together, everybody in Germany like talked about it. Everybody knew who the Last Generation is, what they did, and they had to position themselves into this topic, which is like the start of like something moving, which is really powerful. Our demands are always really concrete and really straightforward, and demands that are like easily implementable, like overnight, and they would save a lot of CO2 emissions. So, for example, our first demand was like the ban of food waste, then the immediate stop of searching for more oil in the North Sea, and most recently a speed limit, which is overdue. Like, some people might laugh about it, but in Germany we still don't have a speed limit. It's just crazy. And yeah, now we try out something new. We now try to push the government to declare something like a societal, society council, to give the power more to the 99% and away from the 1% that is making decisions only for their own profit. So we really try to show the society this is like a huge imbalance, and we need to come together to make the decisions and have like a environmental framework for everything to meet these goals. Yes, now I'm coming to the response and the reactions. So first of all, like the response from media was like great. It was huge. I have a really outdated number. Like 2 months or 1 month ago, we had exceeded 10,000 press articles, and we were on front pages for a whole month of several newspapers, and we were invited to the biggest talk shows in Germany. And yeah, we had like a lot of surveys, and according to the surveys, it's still the majority of people may still reject the methods of the Last Generation. But this holds also for other forms of protest in general. And more people join the movement. And other surveys also said that 82% of Germans see a great need or a huge need to do more in terms of climate protection. So this is like every fourth part, like 4 out of 5 people, which is huge. And so we see that our movement, or like last generation, is like growing a lot, people joining the movement. We have like a lot of or we experience a lot of solidarity, especially after people got arrested for like 30 days in Munich. And while the movement is growing, the politicians or the government really tries to delegitimize the protest by declaring us as a criminal organization. And this is like really absurd and really hard reaction, but we also see that it works, because now they're like really scared that this could really move something here. And yeah, so this is like the little overview from Germany. And yeah, I'm really excited how this next year is going to be like. It will go on, the protest will go on, non-violent, of course, and yeah, it's going to get bigger and bigger in 2023. Ah, we're 2023. No, wait, yeah, okay, sorry. It's going to get huge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lena. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear, I guess, the kind of parallels that are happening between the UK and Germany and other countries. And yeah, if anyone doesn't know, Just Stop Oil and Last Generation, they're both part of the A22 network, which is a network of 11 different countries internationally, all around the world, who are all engaging in non-violent direct action to tackle the climate crisis. So thank you so much, Lena. Before we hear from our next absolutely fantastic speaker, I want to take a moment just to remind everyone here tonight that the reason for this event, so we want to continually push to evolve these discussions and conversations into action. This is about you and me fighting for our collective world united. And we literally need all of us. Most importantly, throughout tonight's event, we'll be reminding you of the different ways you can get involved in order to instigate change. It's essential that we build a collective power and be powerful in our multitude. So I'm just going to remind you quickly of the 3 different ways that you can actually take part in civil resistance. That can be donating. So 1 hour's wage per month is what we ask as a minimum. But at the same time, you know, if everyone who is watching this now just gave, you know, £3, the price of a coffee, which is even less than the price of a pint per month, that would already create a huge impact. So there should be links right now for how you can donate. Another way is to volunteer. So there's so many different roles behind the scenes within Just Stop Oil. It's not just about sitting in the road. You need so many people behind the scenes in order for that to even happen. And the main one that we would absolutely love help with at the moment is fundraising. If you have any fundraising experience, sales experience, marketing experience, then please follow the link on the screen now. Go to one of our talks, Our Responsibilities at This Time. Go to one of those. They're on Zoom, they're in person. And if you attend one of those talks, then you can get in touch with one of us about how you can actually donate your time and your skills. And the final way that you can get involved is to attend a non-violence training. So these are trainings not just for Just Stop Oil, they're for all different types of activist groups, but these give you insight into the fundamental principle of non-violence. Why are we non-violent, and why that's so key to our campaign of civil resistance. And it helps you decide whether you might be willing yourself to step up and take direct action. So there should be a link on the screen now for that as well. Okay, so yeah, without further ado, I'm so excited to announce our next speaker, Jonathan Fuller. So Jonathan Fuller has been active in the eco movement for 45 years. He has been challenging the BBC on climate-related news output for over 10 years and now provides daily updates on UK newspapers to a WhatsApp group that has representatives from Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, Animal Rebellion, and others. John is also part of a group that is attempting to prosecute UK prime ministers for crimes against humanity associated with the mass loss of life caused by climate breakdown. So thank you so much to Jonathan and welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for having me. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Somebody will shout at me if you can't. So I monitor a huge amount of media outputs. I watch a lot of news from BBC, ITV, Channel 4, some of the other broadcasters as well. the main ones, and I buy every day the right-wing press. A lot of people in our movement tend to be more likely to buy the left-leaning or centre-left-leaning papers or look at them on the website, but maybe aren't quite aware of what's going on in the right-wing press and why they continually attack groups like Just Stop Oil. It's a depressing experience reading the right-wing press, but you know, somebody's got to do it so that we know what it is that they're saying. I think the key thing to bear in mind here is where are the billionaires coming from that own the bulk of the right-wing press? They want to drive when and wherever they like. They want to fly when and wherever they like. They want to eat meat. They want to enjoy all of life's luxuries without any restrictions whatsoever. And they're really outraged if anybody should propose that their lifestyle should be restricted. They've got everything and they don't want to give any of that away. So they are out to undermine groups like Just Stop Oil as best they can, and they use a range of techniques. If you were to read the Mail, Sun, Telegraph, Express, Daily Star, you will see a lot of material in there painting us as being eco-fanatics, eco-zealots. Occasionally, the Sun will call us eco-muppets. The Daily Star likes to call us simply Tarquin, which comes from a posh upper-class, middle-class name. They've got this joke that we're all middle-class. You know, I was dragged up in Hackney, so I don't know if it quite applies to me. But anyway, yeah, they like to call us Tarquin. And sometimes we're called eco-fascists. But there is an underlying theme that runs across all the right-wing press. They like to portray us as being fundamentalists, where perhaps also portrayed as anarchists who want to overthrow capitalism. A key part of undermining us is to suppress the most alarming news. Now, when the first speakers here this evening have given you some snippets of alarming news, but there's a lot of it out there. There's a lot of reputable science that shows that we're going over a cliff and it's going to be incredibly painful indeed. Millions and millions of people are going to be killed. Suffering will be unprecedented. Now, they suppress the most alarming news. Very occasionally, you may see some odd bits creeping in, but the overwhelming majority of output will emphasize that where groups like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion are eco-zealots, where we're not in accordance with the science, whereas in fact, of course, we are. And there are other things that they do. For instance, they will say that any action that we might take in the UK is absolutely futile. Just look at China. So that's a regular one that they use. And occasionally they may point at Germany, particularly in relation to coal at the moment. And then also another technique is to portray anybody that wants to take action as a hypocrite. You may find a public figure, perhaps a member of the royal family, who says, I'm very concerned indeed about climate change. Well, immediately the right-wing press will say, oh, look how many flights that person had over the last 6 months. So I think there's a sense there that you don't speak up because you'll just be labelled as a hypocrite if you do. The right-wing press in the UK is fundamentally about delayism. They're not really going for outright climate change denialism anymore. They're about delayism. So they run lots of articles, like, for instance, about nuclear fusion. Let's wait for nuclear fusion to solve this problem for us. Let's wait for there to be an adequate EV charging network around the UK before you even consider buying an electric car. Let's wait for jet zero. You know, pretty soon there'll be the technologies there that will allow us to fly all over the world without changing the climate. Now, all of these things are false. They are illusions. There's no way we're going to get to where we need to be without very significant lifestyle changes. And they don't want that. The billionaires that control the media do not want that agenda. And I monitor a lot of BBC and ITV output, and I would argue that the right-wing press has undue influence on the nation's agenda over the major broadcasters like the BBC and ITV. Less so Channel 4. Now, occasionally you'll see in the right-wing press some stuff, positive stuff, like they may occasionally run a few articles promoting vegan diets or restoring nature and planting trees. But they're really not going to run articles on things that are going to dramatically change their lifestyles or compel the rich to change their lifestyles. Interestingly enough, at the moment, there's a lot of stuff in the media about polluted rivers. sewage being dumped in rivers, and there are frequent calls within the right-wing press for the prosecution of the boards of water companies, including even threatens that they should be put in prison. How very interesting that they never say that about oil executives. Fossil fuel companies are heroes. You know, they're not to be condemned. They're to be protected because they protect the lifestyles of the billionaires. Another thing that they do very regularly, Louise, I'm sure you're well aware of this, they will find any excuse they can to ridicule us as individuals. So Louise took a hell of a lot of abuse in the right-wing press. And they'll go for things like, if Just Stop Oil are out on a march in central London, stop for a lunch break and go into a pub, then they'll take pictures of people in the pub and say, there you are, you see, they're just on the jolly, they're just having a laugh, and they're not even serious. They'll paint Greta, even though, you know, she's well over 18 now. Is she 19? I'm not sure, but she's no longer a child, but they still will paint her as a child who doesn't really understand the way of the world. What you should do is trust the editors of the Telegraph and the Mail and the editor of the Sun and the Times. The Mail is particularly difficult, very hostile. Just over the last weekend, it's run many pages, 6 pages of attack upon net zero, the 2050 net zero target. Even that ridiculously late target is still too soon for the Daily Mail. With the headline, "Net zero will make us poorer, colder and hungrier." And that's written by Ross Clark, who's not got a relevant science degree. You get a lot of that, a lot of rhetoric, a lot of abuse directed at the environmental movement, not founded in science. I know people had a particular interest, obviously, in what's the right-wing media's approach towards the coal mine. I would say that the broadcasters are fairly neutral. They'll paint the pros and the cons. They know how upsetting it is for people to see yet more coal coming out of the ground, but will also say, well, you know, Germany needs it. And even the Greens in Germany seem to be in favour. So maybe it's essential, but it's going to blow our budget for 1.5. So I would say that overall the broadcasters tend to be a bit more neutral, but the right-wing press are using this again as a reason why there's no point us here in the UK making any kind of effort, because again, look at China, look at Germany. In Germany, they're digging up more coal. Why shouldn't we dig up coal if Germany are digging up more coal? So they want to portray the UK as being insignificant in this issue, and the hypocrisy actually is on their side, on the right-wing press side. For instance, they will celebrate and encourage protests in Iran and China, where people are protesting against terrible injustice and lack of democracy, lack of freedom. But at the same time, and they also, the Times, for instance, has actually had a leader comment where it's actually said that we should all get behind the people in Iran and their protests. But at the same time, the Times will then run a series of articles condemning Just Stop Oil because they want to have a habitable planet and they want to save people's lives. It's incredibly frustrating seeing the nature of the right-wing press and how it influences debate in society. A lot of comments that appear in the right-wing press appear just copied, parrot fashion, in social media. A lot of the abuse comes straight from the Daily Mail and the Daily Star and the Sun, and just appears in your newsfeed with people attacking Just Stop Oil. So they are a poison. I would say that the right-wing press is a poison. It is an immense danger to life on this planet. And I would urge everybody to not read it and just leave it to me to read that muck. So that's it from me. I don't know if there's anything else anybody else wants me to mention. I know that there's no Q&A tonight, but you know, people can fire questions at me. I'm on Facebook under Jonathan N. Fuller. It's public and open. You don't have to be a friend with me to ask me a question.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jonathan. That's so interesting. And yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Literally had hundreds of hateful messages, death messages on Instagram. And yeah, they were quoting exactly the things that they read in the Daily Mail, in the Sun, you know, hysterical eco-zealot, oh my God, she drives a car, you know, such a hypocrite, etc. So it's really interesting. And yeah, I mean, even if we look at the PR campaigns of the fossil fuel companies over the last 50 years, you know, they use the press to sow the seeds of doubt about the climate science, to push climate denial, a delay, as you've just said, and this whole individual carbon footprint that was invented by British Petroleum, by BP, to distract away from their destruction, and how at this point in time it is corporations and world leaders that are responsible. They are the only people with the power to change things. But of course, it takes all of us ordinary people and our collective power to stop them from doing that. So thank you so much, Jonathan. I really enjoyed that. So next, we're going to hear from Moritz. So Moritz is a 24-year-old who takes part in climate activism alongside his mechanical engineering masters in Zurich. He studies part-time to allow for as much activism as possible. He has been arrested for taking part in direct action for both Renovate Switzerland and Extinction Rebellion, as well as taking on support roles within those. Most recently, he was part of the Lützerath action and is going to tell us about his experience of Lützerath following the eviction. So thank you so much and welcome, Moritz.
Thanks for the intro, Louise. I'll lead with my experience in Lützerath and then quickly speak about the Swiss campaign. I'll start with a fun little anecdote. Actually, my grandmother used to live in a village that was only about 10 kilometers from Lützerath, from this big, huge coal mine. And my grandfather even used to work for the company that's destroying it, called RWE. I even got a block of coal from him when I was a little child looking like this. And now I went there trying to stop this coal mine's expansion. I arrived in the evening of Monday the 16th, which was after the eviction was already finished, and also after the big demonstration on the 14th that Michael mentioned before. I stayed in the camp in Keinberg, which is just next to Lützerath. The camp was super well organized. They had tents for all sorts of stuff like legal support, awareness, etc., and some big tents for meetings and briefings. When I got there, it was raining, and since the camp is on a football field, it was quite a mudfest. I met up there with a friend who had been there since before the demonstration, since Friday, and he explained me where everything was, including where the briefing of Last Generation, Letzte Generation, would take place. To be more exact, there was for the coming day, there was a big action day planned under the alliance called Lützi Unräumbar, which translates to Lützerath Unevictable. And besides Letzte Generation, there was also Extinction Rebellion, Ende Gelände, Scientist Rebellion, Fridays for Future, and many more taking part. I won't speak in detail about the briefing, security culture, and whatnot, but I felt very well supported and prepared for the coming day. And thanks to already being active in another country, I didn't have to do an action training with Letzte Generation beforehand, so that came in quite handy. The next morning, I woke up semi-rested as the nights were quite cold. I slept in a tent, and even with 2 sleeping bags and an emergency blanket, I woke up a couple of times. Then I put on every piece of clothing I had with me, so like 4 pants and 5 pullovers, quite a lot. And then it went on to the blockade, which was right next to the open cast mine. And we blocked the road belonging to the energy company RWE. There were about 20 people sitting. I was one of the 2 who was not glued. And funnily enough, I was sitting right next to Michael, who you heard earlier. And on that day, since there were many movements taking action, we were not the police's biggest problem. So even I, unglued, stayed for about 2.5 hours. The weather was great. A few layers less would have done the job as well. And yeah, during the occupation, during the action, there was quite a joyful atmosphere. People even managed to play cards, even though they had their hands glued. We had amazing support people that let us know of the other actions happening around, of Ende Gelände, that were happening very close to us and that were successful, which obviously empowered us even more. And actually very, very close to us, there was a small group of Ende Gelände where Greta was in as well. After about 2.5 hours, the police had seen enough and asked us to leave, which we obviously refused to do. And after their third announcement, I was the first to be carried away, which I must say the police did in a fair, non-hurtful way. And this was something I had feared previously, based on the news I've seen and the videos I've seen. They took my ID and my address, took some pictures, and I got an expulsion from the premises, and then I was good to go. The last of my glued-on friends were sitting for another 2.5 hours, and when we were about to leave the area, Greta was getting arrested right next to us. So overall, a very well-coordinated action day. It felt hella powerful knowing others were taking action at the exact same time and very close to us. And also to do the protests right to this abyss of destruction, it just felt so right. Yes, now I'm gonna really quickly touch upon Renovate Switzerland, the campaign I'm involved with. Renovate Switzerland is also a direct action campaign and is same as Last Generation Germany and Just Stop Oil, also part of the A22 network. As our name suggests, we want Switzerland to be better insulated. There are 1 million leaky homes in Switzerland, which is quite a considerable number given that we only have 8 million inhabitants. And while the government already has a plan to renovate those, it would take 100 years at the current speed. We want to speed this up so that they're done by 2040. And our demand is for a government to grant 4 billion Swiss francs to allow 100,000 workers to be retrained as insulation specialists. Our campaign was born a little over a year ago, and we had action waves in April and October last year. In April, we managed to achieve about 10 articles per person taking action. In October, we did a total of 10 actions all over Switzerland, resulting in 600 articles, and we were hitting both the French and German language regions. And for 2023, we have even bigger plans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maurice. Again, it's so fascinating to hear about what's going on within this A22 network, all different countries, all engaging in very, very similar, acts and methods of non-violent civil resistance, just showing the importance of international collaboration on such a global, urgent issue. So thank you so much for telling us about that. So last but not least, our final speaker is Rach from Restore Passenger Rail New Zealand. So Rach is a 51-year-old full-time activist. She has a background in public policy and political philosophy. However, she left behind the academic world about 6 years ago to work on community projects, peace, and climate activism. She has since been arrested 4 times and is currently facing 3 court cases. Rach was among the first people in Extinction Rebellion New Zealand back in 2018, and she went on to start Restore Passenger Rail with 4 friends in August last year, where she is the mobilization coordinator and says it's been a roller coaster ride since. So thank you so much and welcome, Rach.
Kia ora. And I acknowledge Rangi Tane, the Indigenous caretakers of the land where I am, and acknowledge this is stolen land where sovereignty was never ceded. So Restore Passenger Rail has a really simple demand. It's right there, Restore Interregional Passenger Rail. At the moment, there are 3 interregional passenger rail services in the whole country. These are tourist trains, essentially, charged at exorbitant prices. They run only a few times a week and at certain times of the year. We have the lines already. The train lines exist right from the top of the country to the bottom. And most of these are used only for transporting coal to make milk powder to export, and other freight. Meanwhile, the emissions in Aotearoa, New Zealand, continue to rise, and the 2 biggest emitters are these things, agriculture and transport. So Restore Passenger Rail held our first public talk in August 2022, and that resulted in 3 weeks of roadblocks in the capital during October. We had 20 people to sit in the road, and most of these people are now facing between 1 and 3 court cases. We met with the Minister for Transport, and he told us the government couldn't afford interregional passenger rail. It's just not a priority. So a few days after that meeting with him, we sprayed fake blood on 4 cabinet ministers' offices with the message delay equals death. We accused them of criminal negligence, and we said they had blood on their hands. We're now into our second iteration, trying to mobilise at least double the number of people on the motorways. So why are we, a bunch of regular humans, willing to move into disruptive, non-violent civil resistance? The beautiful speakers before me have already talked about this. We've exhausted the proper channels, and so we commit to disrupting business as usual, and this means disrupting the public. And personally, I would rather be doing almost anything else than sitting in traffic or hanging out on a gantry. I'd really rather be playing with my grandkids. But what motivates me, I guess, to keep going is them. I'm lucky enough to live with 2 of my little grandbabies, and they're just a constant joy and inspiration and motivation to keep going. And it's their future that's on the line, and the people who have contributed the least to the climate crisis that pay the highest cost, and the non-human life that has no voice. It compels me to do these things that are disruptive, risky, and actually for most people just simply outrageous. So here in New Zealand, we've had only pretty mild backlash from politicians so far. Our demand is just extremely popular with the public. We've got a majoritarian government that was elected with a really clear mandate and campaigned on transformational change, although this has not been reflected at all in climate policy. In New Zealand, we don't have a history of motorway blocking for the climate. It's a really unpopular tactic, so it's perhaps a little bit shocking that we have done this. But despite this clean green image that New Zealand has, we actually have really high emissions per capita. So we feel really justified to do these actions, and we feel really justified to escalate in our next action phase. So during the action phase that we had in October, we, during one of our actions, we zoomed into the Transport and Infrastructure Select Committee from a gantry above the motorway to give a submission to a parliamentary inquiry into interregional passenger rail. This was a pretty interesting experience, caused the committee to take a little bit of a break and have a private conversation about whether it should be allowed that people can give a submission whilst actively breaking the law. In the end, we returned a few weeks later in person to speak to the submission. The belligerent behaviour of one of the MPs of that committee, Simeon Brown, his name is, caused his colleagues to criticise him during our submission, saying his childish behaviour was threatening to the democratic process. He has since submitted a member's bill to Parliament to create a new criminal offence around obstructing state highways with an increased penalties, the maximum penalty being 2 years imprisonment and up to $2,000, I think that's about £10,000 fine. He said this: while the Transport Minister, Michael Wood, is having a cup of tea with these radical activists, the National Party is standing on the side of law-abiding citizens seeking to get around the country. At a time when transport is the second biggest emitter in the country and road traffic congestion is costing $1 billion a year, we are the ones on the right side of history here. We also have been really super lucky with our media so far. They've been largely supportive. They call us up and say, when are you doing something? There was a poll during our action phase on Radio New Zealand, which is our public broadcaster, asking whether people supported not just restoring passenger rail, but whether they supported our actions. And it had the biggest response of any poll on that program. And around 85% of the respondents agreed with our actions. There was even a poll in the right-wing media, and that had 35% support, which we thought was pretty good from the right-wing media. We had all of the major newspaper outlets and the news programs covering us. We were invited to breakfast television, and we had live interviews on the radio. The media was pretty phenomenal, and it was just really, it was great to have climate change in the news every day for those 3 weeks, and to have some conversations about the democratic process and the role of civil resistance in that process. We also had a number of notable public figures, unsolicited, speak in support of our actions. It was pretty motivating. We are really deeply saddened and outraged by the news that activists at the Lützerath camp have been evicted. In New Zealand, we too have this ongoing issue with coal and campaigns to stop coal. We see the climate movement is seeing government repression increase all around the world, and we are being threatened with this here in our country too. It seems like a pretty common theme at the moment, and actually it's what we can expect. Gandhi said this: first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. And we see this as a sign that we must persist, that they're fighting us, and hopefully soon we're going to see some really significant wins. We also have a couple of people really dear to us actually at the Lützerath camp. They're part of our activist community here, where some of us had various interactions with them, training them, getting them started on their activist pathway, and sitting in blockades and various actions with them. So felt really dear to our hearts, and that we had a little contribution there. And the last thing I want to just talk about is this amazing international community we are growing in this network and beyond. And, you know, we're down here at the bottom of the world. There's not very many of us, and this international collaboration has been a really key part of keeping ourselves going and keeping motivated. The knowledge sharing that we have has been so vital to us, reusing what has worked already for other campaigns and learning from the mistakes of others, and being able to ride out some really, really challenging times with this understanding that we're not the only ones experiencing these challenges, that they've been encountered by others, and the sense of camaraderie and solidarity with other groups, even from way down here, has just been so beautiful. And we're super grateful to be connected to such an inspiring network of campaigns and allies. And I'm just going to finish with this quote from Antonio Guterres, which just seems so apt to this moment of increased state repression. He said, "Climate activists are sometimes depicted as dangerous radicals, but the truly dangerous radicals are the countries that are increasing the production of fossil fuels." Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rach. That was amazing. We're going to wrap up now, but I'm just going to remind you guys of the 3 pathways before we do so. So I just want to say thank you so much to all of our speakers tonight. We really, really appreciate you coming, for sharing your expertise, your personal stories, and the amazing work that you are all doing. You know, the climate crisis, as we've seen, as we all know, affects all of us. It's big, it's daunting, it can leave you feeling confused and individually hopeless. We all need time to talk about it. We simply can't handle it alone. So please, I'd like to remind you, this talk is part of a series of Drill Deep talks. Our next talk will take place in 2 weeks' time online. So if you look out for more information on our social media platforms and on the Just Stop Oil website, it will be there. And you can continue to join in with this discussion so we can engage, educate, and empower each other to take back our power and instigate real, tangible change that we literally need as a matter of life or death. Whether you have been taking part in activism for years, you're completely new to the game, or just want to use these talks to introduce friends and loved ones to the conversation, everyone is welcome. So please join the conversation and become part of a movement. This is a critical time in history. It's a critical point. And by engaging in the conversation and acting in response to it, you are on the right side of history. So I'm just going to end this call with the 3 pathways to action. So as you can see on the screen, number 1 is to donate to Just Stop Oil. Just 1 hour's worth of wage per month would be absolutely amazing. We really, really need the support in order to continue engaging in civil resistance and continuing to put the pressure on this government that are just constantly trying to clamp down on us and violate our human right to protest, to strike, everything. So it really does make a difference. The second pathway is to volunteer. So you can volunteer your time or skills in all sorts of behind the scenes roles, whether it's, social media, content creating, whether it's prison support, police station support, admin, well-being, giving talks. You could even, help run these talks yourself as well. The main one that we would absolutely love help with is fundraising. If you have any experience in fundraising and sales and marketing, that would be fantastic, as the costs of running, civil resistance campaigns are increasing all the time with the fines that people are getting, with the legal costs and everything. So if you have any advice, if you want to donate your skills and time, please do so. The link there will direct you to our events page on the Just Stop Oil website, so you can come to an online or an in-person Our Responsibilities at This Time talk and get connected to us there. And you can find out more information about how to volunteer. And the final pathway, number 3, is to attend a non-violence training. So these are trainings which basically explain the principle of non-violence, why we're non-violent, why it's so essential to non-violent direct action, or to do essential to direct action, thus non-violent direct action. It's a really great experience, and it helps, give you a taste of what actually stepping up into civil resistance and taking action yourself could be, and seeing if that's something that you could do yourself and join a collective body of people who are doing the same. So you can find out about that training through that link there. And that is all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for coming along. And this live stream will be available, so you can rewatch it. You can share it with your friends and family if they've missed it this time. But thank you so much. Good night.